A battle royale described by one participant as a screaming match at times in these meetings between Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein and members of the House Intel Committee. Fox News has obtained emails showing House staffers at one specific meeting were left feeling chilled by Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein after his apparent angry tirade over questions that they were asking about the Russia investigation and documents that they wanted. House sources say that he even threatened to subpoena their calls and emails. Congressional Republicans slamming those actions.
The head of the Justice Department, Rod Rosenstein, was threatening members of the House Intelligence Committee for doing their job.
If you don't believe that the Department of Justice was off the rails, you're clearly not looking at the same Department of Justice I'm looking at.
But critics say that this is all the tactics of the Intel Committee's Republican chairman, Devin Nunes.
I know the reputation of Devin Nunes, and that is one of misleading, obstructing, attempting to intervene in an investigation.
The president's allies in the House of Representatives, starting with Devin Nunes, are doing the president's bidding.
Congressman Peter King sits on the committee that is at the center of all this, and he joins me now. Congressman King, thank you very much for being with us. These meetings have just been described as contentious often, not just in this one instance. Is this a heated room much of the time?
You know, generally the only person on the committee who meets with Rosenstein is Devin Nunes and sometimes Trey Gowdy. Staff members are there often, but Devin always reports back to us, the staff people do, and certainly this is the account that they gave, that when they were trying to get information, which we're entitled to, by the way, it was Congress that created the Department of Justice. We're the ones who oversee them, and they have to provide us information. And for whatever reason, Rosenstein has refused to do it. And that at one of these meetings in particular, it got very heated, and he basically threatened the staff, threatening to subpoena their emails, I guess their text messages, their phone logs, which really has nothing to do at all with the fact that we are legitimately asking for information. So that was clearly a threat and an abuse of power, and it makes you wonder, what are they trying to hide?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Andy McCarthy wrote a piece in the National Review about this today, and he said the House Intel Committee is investigating whether the government has used the Justice Department's awesome investigative authorities as a weapon against political adversaries. And he says that this tells him that what's happening is that the Justice Department is threatening to use their awesome investigative authorities as a weapon against political adversaries. Is that way you see it?
Yeah, unwittingly, they are proving our point, that they do abuse their power and that they have gone well beyond their lane. And also, I would say on this, it's important to point out that Rod Rosenstein, and I have nothing against him personally, but I think he's acted very wrong here. He is the one who signed the fourth FISA application. Yeah. He's the one who signed on to that, and there are real questions about what was contained in that application. So in a way, he is also being investigated himself, and I think he should be recusing himself from this entire matter. But in any event, so he has a double motive here. Not only is he somehow digging in to protect the institution against Congress, but he also has himself being in that fourth FISA application, which he signed on to, and we believe there are irregularities in that application.
How do you see this all being resolved?
I think ultimately the president may have to come in here. I mean, this is
and do what?
Basically order them. I mean, he does control the Justice Department. He can give them very legitimate orders. Turn this over to Congress. Comply with the Constitution. Do what you have to do. If not, if it does have to go to the House and there is a censure vote or an impeachment vote, which I hope we don't have to do, but if we have to do it, we'll do whatever we have to. Because the American people should know what was the basis of this investigation against the president's campaign, who was involved in it, were there informants, how many were there, were they paid, when did they get involved, and how important was that to starting this investigation, or did it come after the investigation started? These should be simple questions, simple answers, and yet we're going through this for months now. And actually, in some cases, almost a year, trying to get the information that should be given. Before
I let you go, as a New Yorker, I want to ask you something about the court here in New York and Michael Cohen, who used to be an attorney for the president. Now it looks like he has had a divide with his attorneys, and there's a lot of speculation that he may be about to flip on the president. What do you think about it?
Well,
what's
first
your
of
take?
all, I would say no, because as far as flipping, you have to have information to give. And as far as I know, from everything I've seen throughout this entire investigation, there is nothing that Michael Cohen would have on the president. And also, I don't think he's the type of person to make something up for the purpose of getting himself off. And so far, I'm not aware of any real evidence against Michael Cohen, unless they're going after him for everything that he possibly could have even thought of doing over the years. So again, I just think that Michael Cohen, right now, these are, as far as I'm concerned, just more rumors coming out.
All right, 3.7 million documents that they're trying to get through by Friday, and now he has apparently separated from his attorneys. It's going to make that task pretty tough. Thank you so much, Congressman Peter King.
Martha, thank you.
Always a pleasure to have you here, sir.
Appreciate it. Thank you.